Okay, so presumably you've done that. Now, I'm going to give you my example, which is probably longer than what you came up with. I've written here the entire sequence of explicit instruction that I would use. Here is the model. We've already done the model here. The teacher did the model of shadow, okay? So now we're going to go right into guided practice because presumably this is easy for students to do. The students were engaged as the teacher did it. And so the teacher is ready to do guided practice with the students because it's a very simple model, totally appropriate. So the teacher then goes right into the guided practice of that. Actually, this is a good clear explanation. Then here's the guided practice. And then the teacher goes into the independent practice using the words that I described. So this is a great way to finish out the explicit instruction sequence and to elicit responses. You notice here, I've determined we should elicit one kind of response, which is, sort of two kind of responses put together, which are a physical response and a verbal response. They're clapping and they're saying the syllables. I think that's perfectly appropriate here to do it just in those ways because we're maximizing the amount of students that are involved and it's not taking a lot of time. Arguably, you could use a turn and talk or a cold call in these cases because with a turn and talk, the students will be whispering to their neighbor. With a cold call, you'd be having individual students respond. I think occasionally those would be appropriate. For this kind of lesson, usually the focus is on core response because it's an easy way to get every student involved. If you put in one of these ideas, I think it would be okay. With the caveat that cold calls, as you know, put you at risk of students not all being engaged in the lesson as you listen to other students do it. And with turn and talk, you can't verify that both kids in the pair are actually getting it, but that's also true core response. So that might have been another option that you used. This would be another good one for maximizing the number of students involved. It might take more time, and that puts us at risk in terms of the amount of time taken. So you have to decide what those are. For my money, I go with core responses, but I can imagine other examples. Okay, so now let's look at the second half of that same curriculum example from Decoding Detectives. And you now can see the second lesson, which is really its own lesson on identifying beginning, middle, and end in the beginning, middle, and end of words, which is an appropriate skill for students to learn with the prerequisite they understand how to do each of those individually because now we're mixing them up. So if we've done that and students are ready for this objective, then we have to think about what is the method used here to get students to participate. So take a look at this. What is the method that's been chosen to get students to participate? Well, if you said hand signals, you were right because it was the thumb up, thumb down here. And so now we can think about where does this fit into our list here of all the different, our diagram of balancing, maximizing engagement by balancing the time taken and the students involved. So how well does this do? Where does it fit into our quadrants here? Think about it for yourself and assume you're thinking as I'm talking, and I would say it goes right here. All the students are going to be involved. It's not going to take a lot of time. So it does meet our criteria for engaging students. So I love that example of that curriculum because it has very different parts to it that meet and then do and do not meet our criteria for engaging students and using explicit instruction. And so if you were teaching this curriculum, you would need to make the decision with that first part on shadow and the orally segmented syllables. Do you want to get rid of that entirely, which would be my decision, or do you want to teach a little mini lesson on that, which you could do if students needed that practice? And then the second half of the lesson is better because now you actually have hand signals built in. They do follow our criteria in terms of maximizing student involvement, and number of students involved, and having limited time taken. And so that would be a good example of that one.